Alexander Stone had built his empire on one simple principle. Emotions were a luxury he couldn't afford. At 35, he was the youngest tech billionaire in Silicon Valley, founder and CEO of Stone Vision Technologies, a company worth $12 billion. His penthouse office on the 47th floor overlooked the entire city, but Alexander rarely looked out the windows anymore. He was too busy looking at screens, graphs, and profit margins. "Mr. Stone, you have the board meeting in 10 minutes. His assistant, Sarah, called through the intercom. Alexander glanced at his watch. 11:47 p.m. He'd been working for 18 hours straight, surviving on nothing but black coffee and adrenaline. His chest felt tight, but he attributed it to stress. After all, stress was just another business expense. "Tell them I'll be there in 5, he replied, standing up too quickly. The room spun for a moment, and a sharp pain shot through his chest like lightning. Alexander gripped the edge of his mahogany desk, his breathing becoming shallow and rapid. The pain spread down his left arm, and suddenly, the most powerful man in Silicon Valley was on his knees, gasping for air. "Call ambulance," he managed to whisper before everything went black. 12 minutes later, the ambulance screamed through the night towards St. Mary's Hospital, Alexander's unconscious body hooked to machines that beeped frantically, fighting to keep him alive. In the ER at St. Mary's Hospital, Hannah Smith was finishing her double shift. At 28, she'd been an ICU nurse for 6 years, and tonight felt like any other night, until the ambulance arrived. "We've got a 35-year-old male, possible myocardial infarction. Vitals are stabilizing, but he's been unconscious for 15 minutes, the paramedics shouted as they wheeled in the stretcher. Hannah's trained eyes immediately assessed the patient. Expensive suit, Rolex watch, perfectly groomed even in unconsciousness. Probably another high-stress executive who thought sleep was for the weak and vegetables were what food ate. "Room 3, let's move," she called out, her small hands already working with practiced precision, checking vitals, adjusting for drips, preparing medications. As they transferred Alexander to the hospital bed, his eyes fluttered open. The first thing he saw wasn't the harsh hospital lights or the maze of medical equipment. It was Hannah's face, focused and determined, her gentle hands checking his pulse. "Sir, can you hear me? You're in the hospital. You've had a cardiac episode, but you're safe now," Hannah said, her voice calm and reassuring. Alexander tried to speak, but could only manage a weak nod. In 35 years of life, no one had ever looked at him the way Hannah was looking at him now. Not as Alexander Stone the billionaire, not as the CEO who could fire anyone in the room, but simply as a human being who needed care. "What's your name?" Hannah asked, checking his chart. "Alexander Stone," he whispered. Hannah didn't flinch at the name, though she certainly recognized it. In a city where tech billionaires were treated like royalty, she simply nodded and continued her work. "Well, Mr. Stone, you're going to be just fine, but you need to rest. No phone calls, no emails, no business meetings. Your heart needs time to recover." For the first time in 30 years, Alexander Stone followed an order without question. 3 days later, Alexander was medically cleared to leave, but something unprecedented happened. He didn't want to go. "Your heart function is normal, Mr. Stone. You can return to work, but I'd recommend reducing stress and getting more sleep," Dr. Martinez explained during rounds. "What about my nurse, Hannah?" Alexander asked, surprising himself with the question. "Nurse Smith? She'll be working the day shift this week. Why do you ask?" Alexander couldn't explain why, but he needed to see her again. For 3 days, Hannah had been his constant care provider. She'd check on him every hour, bring him terrible hospital coffee, and actually listen when he talked, something that rarely happened in his regular life. I wanted to thank her properly." Dr. Martinez smiled knowingly. "She's an exceptional nurse. We're lucky to have her." After Dr. Martinez left, Alexander made a decision that would have shocked his board of directors. He wasn't leaving the hospital. "Not yet. I'm feeling some chest tightness," he told Hannah when she came for her evening rounds. "Maybe I should stay one more night, just to be safe." Hannah frowned, checking his charts. All his vitals were perfect, but she'd learned to listen to patients' concerns. "Let me call Dr. Martinez," she said. "Actually, Alexander said quickly. Could you just monitor me tonight? I trust your judgment. Hannah looked at him suspiciously. In 6 years of nursing, she'd learned to recognize when patients were lying, and Alexander Stone was definitely lying. But there was something vulnerable in his eyes, something that made her want to help rather than confront. I'll check on you every 2 hours, she agreed. That night, as Hannah made her rounds, she found herself lingering in Alexander's room. He told her about his company, not with the arrogance she expected from billionaires, but with genuine passion for technology that could help people. She found herself telling him about her work, about the patients she'd saved, about why she became a nurse. My mother was sick when I was young, Hannah shared during her 2 a.m. check. The nurses at her hospital were like angels. They didn't just take care of her body. They took care of our whole family spirits. I wanted to be that for other people. Is your mother okay now? Alexander asked. Hannah's expression clouded. She has early-stage Alzheimer's. She's in a care facility about an hour from here. I visit every weekend. That must be expensive. Hannah shrugged. I work double shifts when I can. It's worth it. Alexander filed this information away, not for business reasons, but because he was genuinely starting to care about this woman who cared for everyone else. The next morning, Alexander was officially discharged, but he had a plan. 2 days later, Hannah was surprised to see a familiar face in the ER. Mr. Stone? What are you doing here? She asked, concern immediately flooding her voice. I've been having some episodes. Chest tightness, shortness of breath. I was hoping you could take a look, Alexander said, trying to sound convincing. Hannah quickly ran tests, but everything came back normal. She suspected what was really happening, but Alexander Stone looked so genuinely hopeful that she didn't have the heart to call him out. Everything looks fine, but stress can cause these symptoms. Maybe you should consider some lifestyle changes. Actually, Alexander said, I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner with me. You know, to discuss stress management techniques. Hannah almost smiled. She'd been asked out by plenty of men, doctors, other nurses, patient sons, but never by someone who'd invented an elaborate medical condition just to see her again. Mr. Stone, I appreciate the offer, but I don't date patients. What if I wasn't your patient anymore? You'd still be a billionaire, and I'd still be a nurse. What's wrong with that? Hannah looked at him for a long moment. There was something different about Alexander Stone. He wasn't flashing money or trying to impress her with power. He was just asking, like a normal person. One dinner, she finally said. Somewhere normal. No fancy restaurants. Alexander's face lit up like a child on Christmas morning. I know just the place. The diner Alexander chose was a 24-hour place called Mel's that Hannah often visited after late shifts. She was shocked that he even knew it existed, let alone would agree to eat there. You know they have Michelin-starred restaurants fighting to get you a table, right? Hannah asked as they slid into a vinyl booth. I've eaten at those places. The food tastes like obligation, Alexander replied, genuinely studying the laminated menu. What's good here? Hannah watched in amazement as Alexander Stone, worth $12 billion, ordered a burger and fries like it was the most natural thing in the world. When their food arrived, he ate with genuine appreciation, not the mechanical consumption she'd expected. Can I ask you something? Hannah said halfway through dinner. Anything. Why haven't you ever been in a serious relationship? The media always portrays you as this eternal bachelor, but it seems like more than that. Alexander set down his burger, considering the question seriously. Honestly, I never saw the point. Business relationships are transactional. I give something, I get something in return. Personal relationships seemed messy, unpredictable. I couldn't see how they'd fit into my life. And now, Alexander looked directly at her. Now I'm sitting in a diner at 11 p.m. with a woman who saves lives for a living, and I can't remember the last time I felt this peaceful. Hannah felt her heart skip, but she tried to stay practical. Alexander, you don't really know me. This feeling you have, it might just be gratitude. I was there when you were vulnerable. You want to know what I'm grateful for? Alexander leaned forward. I'm grateful that I had a heart attack. That's a terrible thing to say. It's the truth. If I hadn't ended up in that hospital bed, I never would have met you. I would have kept living my half-life, thinking I was successful because I had money and power, never realizing I was actually dying inside. Hannah stared at him, speechless. I know this is crazy, Alexander continued. I know we're from different worlds. But Hannah, when I'm with you, I feel like I'm finally awake after 30 years of sleepwalking. Over the next few weeks, Alexander began what he called his Hannah education. He learned her schedule and would show up at the hospital with coffee during her breaks. He learned about her work and actually listened when she talked about her patients. He met her friends, other nurses who were initially suspicious of his motives, but gradually warmed to his genuine interest in their lives. Most importantly, he learned about her mother. Margaret Smith had been a high school English teacher before Alzheimer's began stealing her memories. Hannah visited every Sunday, reading to her mother, showing her photo albums, hoping to spark some recognition. Alexander asked if he could come along one Sunday, and Hannah reluctantly agreed. "Mom, this is my friend Alexander," Hannah said gently to the woman sitting by the window of the care facility. Margaret looked at Alexander with the polite confusion of someone who couldn't quite place a familiar face. "Are you one of Hannah's students? She's going to be a wonderful teacher, just like me." Alexander glanced at Hannah, who looked pained. Her mother often forgot that Hannah had become a nurse instead of following in her footsteps. "Actually, Mrs. Smith, Hannah is a nurse, and she's the best one I've ever met. She saved my life," Alexander said gently. For a moment, Margaret's eyes cleared. "My Hannah saves people." "Every day," Alexander confirmed. Margaret smiled and patted Hannah's hand. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart." Hannah fought back tears as her mother drifted back into confusion, but Alexander had given her a gift, a moment of maternal pride that she'd thought was lost forever. As they left the facility, Hannah finally admitted what she'd been fighting. She was falling in love with Alexander Stone, and it terrified her. "Thank you for what you did in there," she said as they walked to his car. "I just told the truth." "Alexander, I need you to understand something. I can't be the kind of woman who gets whisked away to a life of luxury. I have responsibilities. My mother, my job, my life, it's all here." Alexander stopped walking and turned to face her. "Hannah, I'm not trying to change your life. I'm trying to figure out how to fit into it." That night, for the first time in 30 years, Alexander Stone fell asleep thinking about someone other than himself. And for the first time in 6 years, Hannah Smith went to bed believing that maybe, just maybe, love was possible for someone like her. 3 months into their relationship, Hannah's world collapsed on a Tuesday morning. "Miss Smith, this is Dr. Williams from Sunset Care Facility. I'm afraid your mother had a fall last night. She's stable, but we need to discuss her care moving forward." Hannah's hand shook as she hung up the phone. At the hospital, Dr. Williams explained that Margaret's Alzheimer's had progressed to the point where she needed specialized memory care, the kind that cost $8,000 per month, compared to the $3,500 Hannah was already struggling to afford. Without the specialized care, she'll likely have more falls, more confusion, more aggressive episodes, Dr. Williams explained gently. "I know the cost is significant, but..." Hannah stopped listening. Even working double shifts, overtime, and picking up extra shifts whenever possible, she barely managed her mother's current care costs. An additional $4,500 per month was impossible. That evening, she sat in her small apartment, staring at care facility brochures and calculating numbers that didn't add up no matter how many times she tried. She'd been avoiding Alexander's calls all day because she knew what would happen if she told him about the situation. Alexander, meanwhile, was going crazy. Hannah hadn't returned his calls, hadn't shown up for their usual coffee during her break, and when he'd asked other nurses about her, they'd said she'd called in sick, something Hannah never did. He finally cornered Dr. Martinez in the hallway. "Is Hannah okay? She's not answering my calls." Dr. Martinez sighed. "Alexander, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Hannah's been dealing with some family issues. Her mother's condition has worsened." "What kind of issues?" "The kind that money solves, but pride prevents accepting help for." Alexander understood immediately. That night, He showed up at Hannah's apartment. "You can't just disappear on me," he said when she finally opened the door. Hannah looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying. "Alexander, I can't do this right now. Tell me what's wrong." "My mother needs specialized care that costs $8,000 a month. I can't afford it, and I can't ask you to help, and I can't watch her deteriorate because I'm too proud to accept charity." Alexander stepped closer. "It's not charity if it comes from someone who loves you. That makes it worse. Don't you see? If I let you pay for my mother's care, I'll always wonder if this relationship is real or if I'm just grateful. Every time we fight, I'll wonder if I'm staying because I love you or because I need you." "So what are you saying?" Hannah's voice broke. "I'm saying that loving you might be the most selfish thing I've ever done, and I can't live with that." Alexander felt like he was having another heart attack, but this time the pain was emotional. "Hannah, you're not being selfish. You're being human. I need some time to figure this out," Hannah said, closing the door between them. Alexander stood in the hallway for 10 minutes, his mind racing. For 30 years, every problem in his life had been solved with money, power, or strategic thinking. But this, losing the woman he loved because he loved her too much to let her sacrifice her mother, this was a problem he couldn't solve in any conventional way. But Alexander Stone hadn't become a billionaire by accepting conventional limitations. The next morning, he made a phone call to the administrator of Sunset Care Facility. "I want to establish an anonymous fund for memory care patients whose families can't afford specialized treatment," he said. "That's very generous, Mr. Stone. How much are you thinking?" $2 million to start, and I want the first recipient to be Margaret Smith, but her daughter must never know the source of the funding. I'm not sure we can guarantee anonymity. Then I'll find a facility that can." Within 48 hours, Hannah received a call that would change everything, though she wouldn't know how much until much later. "Miss Smith, we have wonderful news. Your mother has been selected for our new Memory Care Assistance Program. It's a grant-funded initiative for families who meet certain criteria. Your mother's care will be fully covered." Hannah was suspicious. "What criteria? I never applied for any program." "The program is funded by an anonymous donor who specifically requested that families shouldn't have to apply. That would defeat the purpose of helping people maintain their dignity while caring for loved ones." Hannah wanted to argue, to investigate, to find the catch, but watching her mother receive the specialized care she needed was more important than her pride. What she didn't know was that Alexander had done more than just pay for her mother's care. He'd established an entire foundation, hired staff, and created a legitimate program that would help dozens of families. Margaret Smith was the first recipient, but not the only one. Alexander hadn't just solved Hannah's problem. He'd solved the problem for everyone facing the same impossible choice. 2 weeks later, Hannah was finally getting some sleep. Her mother was thriving in the specialized memory care unit, and Hannah no longer had to work double shifts every week. She had time to think, and what she thought about most was Alexander. She missed him desperately. She missed his terrible jokes during her coffee breaks, missed the way he listened to her stories about difficult patients, missed the way he made her feel like the most important person in the world, even though he was the one with billions of dollars. But she still couldn't figure out how to reconcile loving someone whose wealth could solve all her problems with maintaining her own sense of independence and dignity. The answer came from an unexpected source, her mother. During her Sunday visit, Margaret was having one of her clearer days. "Hannah, honey, why do you look so sad lately?" her mother asked. Hannah was shocked. Her mother hadn't recognized her emotional state in months. "I'm just tired, Mom." "No, it's more than that. You look like you did when you were 16 and broke up with that boy. What was his name?" "Danny." "Mom, that was 12 years ago." "Love doesn't have an expiration date. Sweetheart, are you in love?" Hannah found herself telling her mother everything, about Alexander, about their connection, about her fears of being seen as a gold digger or losing her independence. Margaret listened with the wisdom of a woman who'd been married for 30 years, before Alzheimer's took her husband's memories too. "Hannah, let me ask you something. If this man were a teacher like your father, if he made the same salary you do, would you love him?" "Yes, absolutely." "And if you were rich and he was poor, would you still love him? Of course. Then money isn't the real issue here, is it? The issue is whether you trust each other enough to love, without keeping score. Margaret's words hit Hannah like lightning. She'd been so focused on the financial inequality that she'd missed the emotional equality. Alexander had never once made her feel less important because she had less money. If anything, he'd made her feel more important because she had something he'd never had: the ability to save lives and the compassion to care for others. That night, Hannah made a decision. She was going to find Alexander and apologize for letting her fears overshadow their love. But when she arrived at his office building the next morning, the security guard had unexpected news. "Mr. Stone? He's not here. He's been spending most of his time at the New Medical Foundation. It's about 10 blocks north. You can't miss it." Hannah walked 10 blocks in confusion. What medical foundation? The building was modest but elegant, with a simple sign: the Margaret Foundation, advancing memory care and family support. Hannah's heart stopped. Margaret, her mother's name. Inside, she found Alexander in jeans and a t-shirt, clothes she'd never seen him wear, working alongside construction crews to set up patient consultation rooms. "Alexander." He turned around, and his face went through a series of emotions: surprise, hope, caution, and finally love. "Hannah, what are you doing here?" "I came to apologize, but now I'm confused. What is this place?" Alexander set down the clipboard he'd been holding. "It's a foundation that helps families afford memory care, but it's also counseling services, support groups, respite care for family caregivers. Everything I learned families need after spending time at your mother's facility." The anonymous donor was never supposed to be anonymous to you. "I was going to tell you about all of this, but then you said you needed space, and I thought maybe if I proved that this wasn't about just helping you, if I proved that I was committed to helping everyone facing what you were facing, then maybe you'd understand that this isn't charity. It's purpose." Hannah looked around the foundation, at the comfortable chairs being arranged for support groups, at the consultation rooms being prepared for families in crisis, at the resource library being stocked with information about memory care. "You did all this because of my mother. I did all this because of you. Because you taught me that having money isn't the same as having purpose. Because you showed me that the most important work in the world is taking care of people who can't take care of themselves." Hannah felt tears streaming down her face. "Alexander, I'm so sorry. I was so afraid of losing myself in your world that I almost lost the best thing that ever happened to me." "You never could have lost yourself, Hannah. You're too strong for that. You would have just made my world better, the same way you make everything better." Alexander stepped closer. "I have a confession to make." "What?" "I was never actually single for 30 years, because I was too busy for love. I was single because I was waiting for you. I just didn't know it until I saw you in that emergency room, saving my life without even knowing who I was." "Alexander, I love you, Hannah Smith. I love your compassion, your strength, your terrible taste in late-night diners, and the way you make me want to be better than I ever thought I could be. I love that you chose to save lives for a living. I love that you work double shifts for your mother without complaining. I love that you see me as just Alexander, not Alexander Stone the billionaire." Hannah was crying too hard to speak, so Alexander continued. "I know you're afraid of losing your independence, but what if instead of you joining my world or me joining your world, we created a new world together? A world where we both get to do work that matters, where we both get to take care of the people we love, where we both get to wake up every morning knowing we're making a difference." Alexander dropped to one knee right there in the unfinished foundation lobby, pulling out a ring that wasn't the biggest diamond in the world, but was the most thoughtful: a simple band with Hannah's birthstone, surrounded by smaller stones representing each of the patients she'd told him about over their months together. "Hannah Smith, will you marry me? Will you help me run this foundation? Will you teach me how to save lives instead of just making money? Will you show me what it means to build a life instead of just building a fortune?" Hannah looked around the foundation one more time, this place that existed because Alexander had fallen in love with her compassion and wanted to multiply it across the world. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. Yes to all of it. 1 year later, Hannah and Alexander were married in the garden of the Margaret Foundation, surrounded by families they'd helped, medical staff who'd become friends, and patients who'd become success stories. Hannah kept working as a nurse 3 days a week, spending the other 4 managing the foundation's medical programs. Alexander discovered that giving money away strategically was far more satisfying than making it, and together they expanded the foundation to include programs for family caregivers, medical research grants, and advocacy for healthcare policy changes. Margaret Smith, now receiving the best memory care available, had a remarkably clear day for the wedding. During the reception, she pulled Alexander aside. "You know, I taught English for 30 years, and I always told my students that the best love stories aren't about perfect people finding each other. They're about real people making each other better." Alexander looked across the garden at his wife, who was currently teaching a group of children how to check their dolls' vital signs with toy stethoscopes. "Mrs. Smith, I think your daughter just taught me the most important lesson of my life, that the point of success isn't what you can do for yourself. It's what you can do for the people you love and the people they love." As the sun set over their wedding reception, Alexander and Hannah stood together, no longer a billionaire and a nurse, but simply 2 people who'd found their purpose in taking care of others and taking care of each other. And every time someone asked Alexander about his greatest business success, he would smile and say, "The day I had a heart attack and met my wife. Best return on investment I ever made." If you enjoyed this story of unexpected love and second chances, please like and subscribe for more heartwarming tales that remind us love can happen when we least expect it, but need it most.